Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
For director Coralie Fargeat, that desire and the social pressure behind it inspired her film The Substance. Making it was a reckoning with her own relationship to image and the pressures she felt to conform to certain standards.
And I felt for me it was the time to explore how I feel being a woman, with the way I'm looked at, the way I'm judged, and the way it massively impacts my relationship with society and the world.
The film came about as Fargeat passed 40 and found herself being crushed by thoughts of time running out. Thoughts that originated from the way she barely saw any representations of women over 50 in the media.
And it's like something that is silently telling your brain, that, okay, after that limit, you don't exist anymore. And I said, I think now it's time for me to really do something with that.
In the film, these themes are explored through Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore. She's a former actress turned aerobics icon. Faced with her own fear of becoming irrelevant as she ages out of her career, she's presented with a drug, the substance, that promises to make this dream possible. What follows in the film is Fargeat's response to society's obsession over women's beauty, to the tyranny of image that every woman has felt at some point in her life.
I really wanted to make a big scream, a big kick in the system the way it is, and the idea was to say, come on, wake up, we need a change.
For me, the change has to happen when you open your eyes about what's here.
Fargeat has said the film is built on symbolism, with Elizabeth Sparkle representing what every woman has to face. The idea of having your worth depend on how other people look at you.
As a woman, you can't ignore your body in the public space. Like your body is constantly scrutinized, it's constantly judged, it's constantly commented, it's constantly sexualized. And I felt like everything has been kind of organized to make people that it's okay to do that.
In Elizabeth's case, this scrutiny is to the highest degree. As the film opens, Elizabeth is fired by her boss Harvey, played by Dennis Quaid, who then seeks her replacement. It's an act that reduces her to a commodity, valuable only as long as she can be looked at in the right way.
The movie is not about just aging. It's about how you're supposed to look like and behave to conform to the idea that society has built of what it is to be a girl, what it is to be a woman. And a huge part of it has been defined through the eyes of men. What a girl should be, what a woman should be, to be interesting in the eyes of men, to be desirable.
What Fargeat is describing is the male gaze, a term in feminist theory that references the act of positioning women in media as objects of desire, existing only for the pleasure of the male viewer. Through the gaze, a woman is made socially unequal as she's dehumanized, and instead becomes a spectacle to be viewed and commented on. The cameras that surround her, the Hollywood setting, and her appropriately named boss all serve as symbols of the male gaze. But the influence of the male gaze doesn't end with how women are portrayed from the outside. Over time, this external scrutiny is absorbed, shaping how women come to see and judge themselves. In other words, the gaze is not only imposed, but internalized. Feminist philosopher Sandra Bartky draws on Michel Foucault's theory of the panopticon to explain this process. In Foucault's account, the panopticon is a prison design, where inmates never know when they are being watched, so they internalize the guard's gaze and discipline themselves. Just as prisoners regulate their own actions under the imagined watch of a guard, women too learn to monitor their appearance and behavior under the imagined watch of men. As Bartky writes, in contemporary patriarchal culture, a panoptical male connoisseur resides within the consciousness of most women. They stand perpetually before his gaze and under his judgment. Woman lives her body as seen by another, by an anonymous patriarchal other. Or, as Margaret Atwood puts it, you are a woman with a man inside watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. This internalized surveillance is powerful because it's everywhere and inescapable. There's no single person to resist, just a constant cultural pressure that follows women into their most private moments. This is particularly apparent in the scene where we witness Elizabeth break down as she gets ready for a date. This internalization blurs the line between what we do for ourselves and what we do to satisfy the gaze, producing a form of discipline that feels natural, even voluntary. As Melissa Febos in her essay collection Girlhood writes, "We are expressing ourselves with makeup. We like to shave our legs because it makes us feel feminine. We dress for ourselves and for other women. It isn't that these things are never true or that there aren't plenty of other compelling reasons, only that they exist alongside internalized directives. The call is coming from inside the house. That is, patriarchal coercion is a ghost, a specter that possessed me as a girl and possesses me still, that squeezes a yes out of my mouth when my body tells me no." But what becomes of the girls who grow into women that perfect this performance? Does their success bring true empowerment? After injecting herself with the substance, Elizabeth's younger self, Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, is born out of her spine. The rules of the substance are simple. They must alternate every 7 days and remember that they aren't actually separate, but one. As Fargeat says, Sue is the incarnation of what the outside world makes us fantasize for ourselves. She is the fantasy of the male gaze. Sue auditions to replace Elizabeth and effortlessly becomes the face of her own aerobics show. As she revels in this new feeling of power that comes with perfectly embodying the male fantasy, it raises the question of whether power dependent on others' desire can ever be genuinely hers. Model Emily Ratajkowski reflected on the same dynamic, writing, "In my early 20s, it had never occurred to me that the women who gained their power from beauty were indebted to the men whose desire granted them that power in the first place. Those men were the ones in control, not the women the world fawned over." Facing the reality of the dynamics at play would have meant admitting how limited my power really was, how limited any woman's power is when she survives and even succeeds in the world as a thing to be looked at. Susan Sontag expands on this idea, observing that, "To be sure, beauty is a form of power, and deservedly so. What is lamentable is that it is the only form of power that women are encouraged to seek. This power is always conceived in relation to men. It is not the power to do, but the power to attract. It is a power that negates itself." As Sue begins to crave more of this power, a darker side emerges. Her aesthetic shifts from pink and bubbly to blue velvet and black leather, and she becomes increasingly threatening to Elizabeth, more and more unwilling to switch back. But each delay takes its toll. The longer Sue waits, the more Elizabeth ages. Her transformation and unwillingness to give up control reflects how the very thing she seeks becomes what is controlling her. Fargeat observes, "You conform yourself to that perfect, hyper-sexualized ideal. That's what the body of Sue expresses during the dance scenes. Of course you enjoy being the center of attention. And yes, everyone looking at you is a powerful feeling. But that was a way for me to say, it's a fake promise. It's a never-ending quest to always be something that people expect from you." The scene where a bump pops up on Sue shows her growing hypervigilance against failing to meet those expectations. As Sontag writes, "The ideal of beauty is administered as a form of self-oppression. Women are taught to see their bodies in parts and to evaluate each part separately. Each in turn is submitted to an anxious, fretful, often despairing scrutiny. Even if some pass muster, some will always be found wanting. Nothing less than perfection will do." Sue becomes symbolic of this self-oppressor. Control yourself! As Fargeat explains, Sue is not freedom. Sue is a prison. Sue is the tyrannical image that doesn't exist and is going to make us feel bad because we are not that. This is the tyranny that prevents you from taking your place in the world, because you think that until you're that perfect fantasy that society has built for you, you're not worth taking your space. Sue's refusal to switch back causes Elizabeth's body to rapidly age. Overcome with despair, Elizabeth attempts to terminate her, but hesitates at the last moment. She wakes to find Elizabeth beside her, and the two meet for the first time. The confrontation turns violent, ending with Sue destroying Elizabeth. But since they were never meant to exist separately, Sue's body starts breaking down. Desperate to save herself, she breaks another of the substance's rules by attempting reanimation. This results in her transforming into a grotesque fusion of both women, called Monstro Alyssa Sue. Looking in the mirror, Alyssa Sue sees herself with tenderness and self-acceptance. It's a stark contrast to the self-disgust Elizabeth felt before her date. In this state, she is so far beyond fitting any ideal that she no longer has to care about her appearance. Fargeat notes that the monster was the liberation from the tyranny of image. The monster, to me, represents who we are for real, our whole humanity with its weakness, its truth, and its imperfection.
For the first time, she sees herself as who she is, not what her body is and not how she's going to be judged. And it's the moment where she says, oh, okay, I'm going to put my earrings, I'm going to prep myself because I deserve to have my place in the world and to have my moment.
As Monstro Alyssa Sue takes the stage, standing before an audience that represents society itself, she realizes the world isn't ready to abandon its rigid standards of beauty and acceptability. Instead, she's met with horror, ridicule, and attack. In response, she unleashes her revenge in a shocking display that forces the audience to confront the internal violence their impossible ideals have inflicted on her. Fargeat makes clear the intention behind this spectacle.
I think there is so much that going on inside us internally that you are used to just keep with ourselves. And we go in society and we smile even when something makes us uncomfortable because that's the way, you've been used to deal with things. You don't want to make problem. You don't want to be the one that's going to be spotted. And I think it's a huge part of the human story that we don't hear, that we don't look at, that we don't listen. And the idea of the film was to say, look at that. Look at what we really go through. Look at who we really are. Look at our stories. Look at our inner fights. Yeah. Look at our complexity. And I wanted to make it all that explode in the face of society so we finally see it.
After this chaotic scene, Alyssa Sue stumbles outside and falls apart, leaving only Elizabeth's face crawling towards her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where she completely dissolves away. The substance exposes what we'd rather not acknowledge, our deep anxieties about aging, irrelevance, and being replaced. Today's social media culture both amplifies these fears through constant comparison and intensifies the pressure to monitor ourselves. As Febos writes, as I stand in front of the mirror in the women's bathroom at the college where I teach, one in a line of poised faces whose eyes meet those of their reflections, I think, if only Foucault could have seen the astonishing influence of social media, that coup of panoptical technology, now we are never not posting the evidence of our well-disciplined bodies. For the way out, Fargeat makes clear that the answer shouldn't lie in more judgment, echoing Sontag's distinction that it is not, of course, the desire to be beautiful that is wrong, but the obligation to be, or to try. Instead, as Fargeat said, we must begin by opening our eyes to what's here.
I think the more the subject will be discussed, will be confronted, will be addressed, will be analyzed, the better it will be.
In doing so, we shift from being observed to being observers of the system itself, reclaiming our perspective and agency. This act is what filmmaker Agnes Varda called the first feminist gesture. To say, okay, they're looking at me, but I'm looking at them. The act of deciding to look, of deciding that the world is not defined by how people see me, but how I see them. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the substance in the comment section, and please let me know if you have any recommendations for other films that explore similar themes. For more videos like this one, please like and subscribe.